Hi, I'm Tequia Burt, Editor-in-Chief of the LinkedIn Marketing Collective and the LinkedIn for Marketing blog. And I'd like to welcome you to this month's collective conversation, where each month we chat with a LinkedIn executive or top industry thought leader to explore the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities shaping B2B marketing. And this month, we're chatting B2B measurement with our guest, Drew Neisser, host of CMO Huddles. It's so nice to meet you, Drew, and welcome to Collective Conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm a big LinkedIn fan, and our entire business model of CMO Huddles is dependent on it. So I'm delighted to be here. So thank you for that. I've been fortunate enough to interview over 600 CMOs over the last 15 years for articles, podcasts, books, and I've developed this unique expertise on this immensely complicated and I might say problematic role. Lastly, I guess I'll say I am a deep well of empathy when it comes to the CMO role, and it's amazing to me, but it's not getting any easier. It's getting harder.
So let's lay the groundwork in terms of what's happening in measurement right now. What would you say are the biggest challenges that B2B marketers face today when measuring success?
Yeah, well, so we got to go macro and then we got to go micro. Because there are forces. Look, we know that when the economy is good, B2B grows. And when the economy is bad, B2B suffers. And so right now, it's been very hard to tell where the B2B economy is. And the problem with that is uncertainty. And when you have uncertainty, you get CFOs becoming armadillos and saying, I'm not going to spend any money. So you've got uncertainty in the economy, and you've got a pace of change in generative AI. So there's that macro, and then the micro issue with the challenges CMOs face in measurement and everything else is doing more with less. And so doing more with less meant could mean less people. It could mean less programs. It could also mean less technology, which has an impact on what you can measure. So
right.
It's a very tricky time. I talked to a CMO today, literally, and she, for the 5th year in a row, had asked for her budget to be cut. And even though they met all their numbers every single year, and it's like, so, when you talk about that in the context of less dollars, whether it's people, programs, or tech, and results, there's a problem. You're getting less resources to do stuff. So measuring becomes another problem because you have to sort of say, okay, well, we're going to shrink what we're measuring because we're going to shrink what we're going to be able to do.
So speaking of that, in this environment, right, how can marketers prove their impacts? What are the smartest ways for B2B marketers to sort of demonstrate their contribution to revenue without sort of getting stuck in attribution battles?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I'm so glad you asked it, and we can spend some time on it because, well, one, attribution is so problematic. 2, connecting marketing to revenue is so problematic. So, and this is a very real issue. I mean, literally in the last 3 weeks, 3 different CMOs came to CMO Huddles with this request: help, our attribution model is changing. And it's funny because in one case, we're going from first touch to last touch. And then in another case, it was like, we're moving from last touch to first touch. and then the others were the combo. So while I applaud and no CMO today can get away without trying to link their actions to revenue, the problem fundamentally is that the more you talk about that, the more you are showing that or making people think that it's a gumball machine. John Miller talks about this. You put in a quarter and a gumball comes out. It doesn't work that way. And if you can I give an example of why this is so problematic?
Yeah.
So we had a show yesterday with 3 CMOs, and we were talking about analyst relations. Okay. Analyst relations, which you say, you need to be in the, you want to be on Forrester's Wave and
right.
Gartner's Quadrant. And if you're not, you're kind of nobody in certain categories, right? Well, first of all, being on the wave gives salespeople something to sell against, then they can make the sell. How long does it take to change or get on an analyst thing? A year? 6 months, a year, 18 months? And when you do finally get into the wave and you're mentioned, what's the business value of that? It's really hard. And by the way, it's a lagging, it takes you a year to get there. You do it right. You finally get that. And it has a huge impact in that moment, in that suddenly you're getting presentations that you didn't get before. You're getting inbound that you didn't get before. And yeah, you can measure all those things. But if you're an enterprise company, that's going to show up as revenue 6 months to 12 months later.
Right.
So it's kind of a fool's errand to try to say marketing equals revenue. On the other hand, I get it. I know the CMOs have to do something. So
right.
It's I haven't given you an answer. I've just really so far I've just talked about the problem. Should we talk about the answer a little bit?
Let's do it.
Okay. So again, I think how a lot of this is step back with your sales and your customer success people and creating a go-to-market strategy that has a joint goals. We're going to get right. We're going to focus on this target. This is the story that we're going to tell. We're going to reach this people. We're going to engage with them at a certain level, and we're going to close a certain amount of business in a certain amount of time. It is no longer a conversation of marketing driving revenue. It is a conversation about the company driving revenue. The minute you try to pull marketing out of the sales initiative, you're creating an expectation that is problematic. So in an ideal world, CMO and CRO are presenting the same data.
Right.
And then we can break down what that data is. Salespeople are always going to talk about sales qualified opportunities. Fine. Great. That's great.
Right.
But do not get in a battle with, was that marketing contributor, sales contributor, because it doesn't matter. One, it doesn't matter. And two, it is impossible to find a sales qualified opportunity that didn't have a marketing touch.
Right. Yeah, right.
Of course it did. When was the last time you bought something that you didn't go to a website and check it out?
Right. I mean, that seems like, common sense to me, but.
Right. So it's when you sort of go micro that you create all these problems. This program is going to deliver this kind of opportunity. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we talk about our go-to-market, this strategy, this target, this message, this combination of programs, will get us there. Does that hold water?
Yeah, that makes sense. So is that the way that B2B CMOs can get on the same page with their CFOs? There's been a lot of talk in the past few years, and we found the same thing in our B2B marketing benchmark that, it's becoming more and more important that CMOs talk the language of finance and are able to communicate their worth to the C-suite and in particular to the CFO. So how do you think marketing leaders should do that and educate their CFOs and CFOs on the right way to evaluate their impact?
It's a great question, and it's an important thing. There is no way a CMO can be successful without having a really good relationship with their CFO. It's impossible. So it's a given. So what does that mean, and how do you build that relationship and what that looks like? So first, it's stepping back and saying, CFO, how does this business make money? How do we make money, right? And understanding the CFO's model. Does the CFO have a model to making money? So first, as you start to hear how they talk about that, you are all of a sudden they go, oh, they care about what I do. Then the second thing to understand is the CFO's job is to pull the levers that will generate the most, whether it's profit margin or growth or whatever. And you need to understand, is it EBITDA? Is it bottom line? Is it top line growth? Is it both? Is it some combination, rule of 40, rule of 50, whatever it is? You as a CMO have to understand that. You have to go and break it down with the CFO and say, okay, so how do we get there? And This is where all the problem begins. And the problems come from this notion that growth is a strategy.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the CFO says, oh, we're going to grow 20%. And we do that by adding half of that will come from existing customers and half of that will come from new customers. So go get 10% new, net new, and divide up that number, and you need 50 net new customers. Still not a strategy.
Right.
Right. So the problem is it often stops there. So you have to go with the CFO and then you keep going and say, okay, we've got this revenue growth thing. We have a certain goal here. Let's break that down further. How do you think we're going to win those? Are they going to be people who are new to the category? No, we're going to be stealing. How are we going to steal them? And is that going to have an impact on our margin?
Right. So
I have another idea for you that's bigger than all of the things that we've
talked
talked
about.
What is it? Pricing power.
Pricing power. Explain.
Pricing power. So forget about talking about marketing at all. Talk about marketing as a driver of pricing power, because the CFO's eyes will light up and they go, wait, what are you talking about? Just like yours did. What do you mean? So let's go in the grocery store for a second and let's talk about generic, foil, and Reynolds wrap. Which one are you going to buy?
Reynolds wrap.
Right. Why? Because you know and trust it. Okay. The difference between the Reynolds wrap price and the generic price is value, is pricing power driven by marketing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now, again, now you have to think about marketing as a very broad thing, because it's packaging, it's promotion, it's pricing, it's all of the things that go in the reputations, customer service. So now we can have a broader conversation. So if we could improve our margins, would that matter to you? Mm-hmm. If we didn't have to discount every single fourth quarter to hit our numbers, would that matter to you? Then we can have a conversation about reputation building. And then we have to start to get to a place where the CFO goes, oh, so if I spend money this way or with you, you can improve our reputation. That will improve our pricing power. Our margins will be better. And we might just hit our numbers.
Right. Right.
That sounds like a pretty powerful conversation coming from someone who thought they were going to be talking about digital marketing spend.
So let's talk about reputation building, right? So one of the things that B2B organizations really struggle to do is to measure their brand investments. So how should marketers prove the value of brand building alongside demand generation?
Thank you for asking this question. I love this question. I'm going to change the vocabulary for a little bit. I have found that no matter how well CMOs explain the idea of brand, they lose. Mm-hmm. Because it feels like fluffy, colored. Right. So I really encourage CMOs to use the language of reputation. Everybody understands the notion of reputation. Right. If you have one or don't have one, is it a good reputation? Is it a bad reputation? And does it vary by employees, customers, prospects, partners, and analysts? So we can talk about reputation. And so first of all, there is no such thing as demand without reputation. I don't search for you if I don't know what you do, who you are. I won't click on your ad if I don't know who you are. So the notion that these things are separable is craziness. But I think CMOs and marketers have created this problem themselves. They've taken their budgets and say, we have revenue, we have growth marketing, and we have brand marketing. We have a growth group and we have a brand group. And the minute you separate those things out, you call into question, you say, oh, well, let's just spend much money on revenue because I want revenue, right?
Right.
So they've created this problem, and so that's part one of this thing. But your real question was, how do we measure this? It's a lot easier than you think, as long as you think about it in terms of trending and not absolutes. So all we're looking for is our reputation getting stronger against our various constituents? Again, employees matter in this thing, a big deal. Customers matter in this thing. And if we look at each of those, We can say, well, we can survey employees right now. We can do an ENPS score really easily. And we can do that on a quarterly or annual basis. We can see, are they recommending us to their friends or not? Are they actually taking an action and being a voice for the company or not? And you can see the trend. That's easy. Customers, a little trickier to track, but there are lots of ways. What's your renewal rate? That's an indication of the strength of your reputation. What's your referral rate? What's your customer testimonial rate? There's a number of things that you can look at that will give you a sense of this. And all we're doing is weighting these things and tracking them over time. And if you add them up on a cumulative basis, you can create a reputation index. I'm prospects. What are the signs that a prospect knows who you are? Well, branded search would be one. Those are things you can find out. Website traffic could be another. Attendance at a webinar could be another. There's all sorts of things that you are doing that suggests that someone has heard of you that you can track that you don't have to pay extra for with prospects. Analysts, obviously, where are you with them? So you have these sort of, and partners. Most big enterprise companies have partners. How often does a partner recommend you instead of somebody else? What's the partner's win rate instead of you? All of these things could be, and you don't have to do all of them, but you can pick the ones that sort of matter to you and your industry and are part of your strategic plan, and you create a reputation index that you track on a quarterly or monthly basis. And you're just trying to see, did we get better or worse Q1 to Q2? And if you do that, you have a pretty good sense of where reputation is for the company. And very few companies have what I used to call a brand health metric, or what I'd like to call a reputation index.
So let's go back to what you were talking about at the beginning of this conversation. That wasn't about measurement. That was about how we're kind of lumping brand and growth together into one thing and how that's creating a challenge for B2B organizations. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So again, we've done this to ourselves. And this is the blessing and the curse of digital marketing. Digital marketing is incredibly measurable in theory. We can buy an ad on LinkedIn, yay. We can have all sorts of different ways that the customer can interact with it, and then that can create a lead form. And eventually we can come up with what everybody called a cost per acquisition number. And so in this perfect world of direct marketing, of dollar in, dollar out, you can buy on a platform like LinkedIn and make you think that that dollar in LinkedIn, probably cost you $1,000 to $1,000, $3,000 to acquire a customer. Yay, lifetime value is $100,000, cheap as just, it's a problem. Because digital marketing is so easy to measure, we overemphasize the metrics that we have, and we under measure, we do not sort of take into account some of the things that we don't have. Along the way on reputation, if we take the LinkedIn ad story, if I've heard of your company, I'm 10 times more likely to click on it than not. Period. Well, that was all the investment that you did. Take another thing, take event marketing. If we look at event marketing, we say, oh, well, did we get leads out of that? So, and we're going to measure it that way. Net new. But what if you had 4 customers there that came by and you had a good conversation and they started using the product to its greater potential and therefore stayed there? There's business value there. What if you brought prospects there and they closed? There's business value there. So this notion of trying to separate some of this stuff out has created a problem. And it all started with digital marketing. Before that, we never had to measure any of this stuff.
Right.
Right? But now we have all these metrics on all sorts of levels, and we go, oh, this is great. And so the result is that way overemphasis on digital and way underemphasis on reputation building. And it's really a problem for a lot of businesses.
So I have one last question for you. Considering everything that we talked about today, what is your best piece of advice for B2B marketers who are trying to kind of think about a new way to think about their measurement strategies? What would you tell them?
Yeah. So take 10% of your dollars and create some programs. This is really hard because it's going to speak against a little bit of what I've talked to, that do exactly the opposite of what you're currently doing. So again, chances are you are overestimating, emphasizing sort of driving top of the funnel leads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And underestimating anything that is building your reputation. And take some dollars and put it into reputation building and see if you can move the needle on reputation, and then try to correlate that with close rates, because that's where reputation shows up.
Right.
Right now, close rates are as bad as they've ever been, like 1 in 5 or 1 in 6. And that close rate, a modest improvement in close rate makes everybody look good.
Yeah, it does.
And reputation equal better reputation, better close rate.
Right. You're always going to go with the Reynolds wrap.
Exactly. Pricing power. Pricing power is reputation, right?
Yeah.
You can't get there without that. So,
right.
But you have to pull some dollars out.
Right.
You can't keep filling the demand so it looks like your leads MQLs to SQO ratio is consistent. Look at your SQOs; those aren't closing. How do you fix that and work your way back?
That was a great conversation. And thank you so much for spending some time with us today, Drew. It was great. Thank you so much.
Oh, Tequia, my pleasure. What a treat. And thank you for doing this. I know how much work it is, and it's really important. This is important stuff.
I appreciate you too, Drew. You keep doing what you do too. And to our listeners and our viewers today, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next month. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter to make sure you're a part of the collective conversation. See you next month. Bye.